It looms large over all of Turkish life, the military, the guardians of the secular constitution. So what happens when Turkey's 4 top military men all want out? Is a showdown between government and army edging closer? Turkey and the commanders who quit. This is Inside Story. Hello there, I'm Kamal Santamaria. Turkey is characterised by many things, but its secular society, enshrined in the constitution and fiercely protected by the military, perhaps best defines the country. But recently, the apparent war of words between the military and the ruling AK party is creating problems. It's an argument which refuses to go away and indeed got worse when Turkey's 4 top military commanders submitted their retirement letters. That was the official line. In reality, they basically quit. We'll discuss in a moment where Turkey goes to from here, how the government and the army might start to resolve this impasse. First, a report from Omar Al-Saleh explaining how this latest move fits into the ongoing struggle between Turkey's highest powers.
Responding quickly and wasting no time, the Turkish government appointed a new commander of ground forces. General Necdet Uzul, who also became the acting chief of staff, met with the country's top leaders, President Abdullah Gül and the Prime Minister Tayyip Erdogan. Uzul was the remaining highest-ranking commander after the resignation of Turkey's top 4 generals. He's now expected to be appointed as the chief of staff as part of Turkish tradition. The office of the Prime Minister released a brief statement on his website saying the Turkish armed forces would continue to do their duty in a spirit of unity. But tensions between Turkey's military and the government has been brewing for years. The country's top general Eşek Koçner, along with the head of the Navy, Army and Air Force, appealed for early retirement. The walkout came hours after a court charged 22 suspects, including several generals and officers, with carrying out an internet campaign to undermine the government.
The government's policies, of course, do not create happiness among the military circles. In the last 10 years in particular, the military more and more lost its political influence. Probably with this retirement today, the Turkish history, in this case, is entering into a new stage. It means that the civilians will get more control over the military.
In recent years, a series of investigations have revealed the length the secularist military would go to curb Erdogan government initiatives. Perhaps the most high-profile case saw 17 generals and admirals jailed along with nearly 200 officers on charges of plotting to overthrow the government in 2003. Erdogan's ruling Justice and Development Party won a 3rd term with a landslide victory in June and is now focusing on replacing a military-era constitution with a more democratic one. Turkey's military, which enjoys great traditional respect and has huge economic resources, has staged 3 military coups in the past. But their power seems to be dwindling since Erdogan's party came to power in 2002. Omar Saleh for Inside Story.
But even so, the military is still hugely significant, which is why we're talking about it today. So let me introduce our 3 guests for you. In Istanbul is Mustafa Akyol, the author of Islam Without Extremes. Henri Baki, a professor of international relations at Lehigh University in Pennsylvania, is with us from Paris, actually, today. And back in Turkey again, Ankara, we've got Haldun Solmazturk, a retired brigadier general. Gentlemen, I want to thank you all for coming on Inside Story, for your time. Let's actually start in Ankara with Haldun Solmazturk, as he is, as we say, a retired brigadier general. I want to know your immediate reaction as it was when you heard that the 4 top military men had, and this is the key here, the phrasing, they had submitted their retirement letters. They didn't say they quit or resigned, they said, we're off into retirement.
I was not surprised. As a matter of fact, in my understanding, this was a delayed move, describing the situation as a kind of struggle, power struggle between the army and the government would be misrepresentation and would cause a misperception That's more than that. That the current crisis, current problem is much larger than that. The trouble is Turkey is moving away from democracy. So it's not something between the government and the army. It's something between the government and the rest of the political environment. I mean, the government is aiming for complete control, the domination of the political scene. So the army, the attack directed at the army, is used as an example to intimidate the rest of the opposition, political opposition. So it's a false impression focusing on the army case only. It's not only generals and admirals and high-level officers who are arrested in jail without conviction now, but there are journalists, there are academics, there are police chiefs, there are civil society leaders, there are even politicians who are in jail, and they still do not know why they are in jail after years.
Okay, so we'll expand on that false impression, as you call it, in a moment. I just want to stay with you just one more moment to get a military view on the operational side of things. Just quickly, when you lose your 4 top military men, what does that do operationally to the military in Turkey, or is the succession plan efficient and effective enough for there not to be too much disruption?
Of course, a solution will be found in terms of operational effectiveness, making sure that the hierarchy, military hierarchy is maintained, etc., etc. But the trouble is the perception by the military. Of course, I'm not talking on their behalf. That's me personally. But my understanding, my perception is that the military is feeling being fought against by their own government. This has an inevitable detrimental effect on the morale, hence the operational effectiveness of the army. No doubt about that.
Okay. Mustafa Akyol in Istanbul, let me bring you into the conversation. Haldun Sılmaz used the phrase delayed move. He said this move by the military was a delayed one. Indeed, they have, in all of this controversy over many years, the military has kept pretty quiet. Has it stayed silent for too long? Was a move like this, perhaps should it have happened earlier?
Well, first of all, I should say, with all the respect, I strongly disagree with the general, Mr. Solmaz Türk in Ankara. I think Turkey is not getting away from democracy. We just had a popular election, which more than 80% of the society joined, and the governing party got 50% of the votes. So we have a free and functioning electoral system here. And we were certainly not a better democracy when the Turkish military was executing prime minister, torturing political dissidents, and employing death squads to kill, assassinate journalists that they didn't like. So we were not really a democracy in the 90s when the Turkish generals had their thumb on the political system. We certainly should be a better, more liberal democracy, and I think if you look at European Parliament reports about Turkey's progress, you can say Turkey is making progress, and this government is included. The cases that the general mentioned, yes, some of them are controversial, and I think some of the cases against coup attempts in Turkey might be excessive in some regards, but there is also a genuine fear that some people, some wing in the military was cooking up military coup attempts against the current government. And if you're a Turk, if you live in this country and you've seen 4 military coups, you understand that these are not just imaginary conspiracy theories. As for the generals who resigned, I mean, in the old days, if the generals did not like a government, they would force the government to resign. So right now, they can do anything, they resign themselves, and I think that's a sign of a more healthier political system. I mean, there are respectable generals, I hope they will be happy in their retired life, but Turkey should learn that political power is at the ballots and not at the barrel of a gun. And we are learning that.
Now, you make a good point there, and I'd like to see what Henri Baki thinks about that, the idea that perhaps in the past it wouldn't have been resignations, it would have gone the other way. The army would have been putting pressure on the government. Is this showing any signs of weaknesses in the military, do you think?
Well, I would say that we will look back at yesterday when the officers resigned as the day when the Turkish military was finally civilianized. I think it's a watershed event precisely as Mustafa said, in the old days they would threaten, they would cajole, and they would get their way. Now all they can do is resign. And I think that's very healthy. I think it's good that they resign if they don't like what's going on. There was only one such case in the past in 1990 when a chief of staff, only one person resigned. So, but this is a culmination of a long process. I mean, the truth is, Mustafa said, the generals essentially ran Turkey. And starting essentially in 2007, the pendulum started to swing against them. And they really have themselves to blame for it. They continuously interfered in Turkish politics, thinking that they were so popular that they could get away with everything. They imposed a constitution and a legal system on the country now they are a victim of that system, but it is a system of their own design. It's a system that is not friendly to somebody who's accused, to the accused, because it puts a person in jail for a very long period of time without charging someone. But this is what the generals did, and this is what they did to their dissidents. People have been languished in jail and were sentenced for very long periods of time under their own system, and now that system is coming after them. But it is because starting in 2007, they overplayed their hand. They went after the government. They tried to intimidate it. And in 2007, the government called their bluff and had elections, and the election was really about whether or not Mr. Gül could become president. And this is something that the generals did not want. And the public came back and said, no, we want Mr. Gül as president. It was a complete setback for the generals. And from then on, they made other mistakes. They made certain mistakes, like they lied to the public about casualties in the war against the PKK, about people who died. And so they are very, very weak today. And this is the culmination of a long-term process. It did not happen overnight.
I think we'll give Haldan Salmaz-Türk a quick right of reply there, because the other two guests there, Mr. Salmaz-Türk, have put forward a lot of claims about what the military's been up to over the last few years, and it's suggesting that they've overplayed their hand, thought they were too popular. Your response, just quickly?
The military, for the last 4 years, has remained completely out of politics. So if somebody is arguing about past history, I would disagree with him. I'm talking about today. I'm talking about the last 4 years. Regarding the European Parliament report, spelled out or reminded by my colleague in Istanbul, let me read a passage from this report. Points to the crucial role of a system of checks and balances in the governance of a modern democratic state, which must be based on the principle of separation of powers, with balance between the executive, legislative, and judicial functions, on respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms, in particular freedom of expression and freedom of the press, and on a participatory political culture, truly reflecting the plurality of a democratic society. March the 9th, 2011, this was what European Parliament report said. It reminded the Turkish government what democracy is about. Democracy is not about how governments come to power. Democracy is about how governments behave, how governments act once they are in power. The current Turkish government is not behaving in a democratic way. Again, they are aiming to intimidate the political opposition by using army cases or trials related to the army to intimidate people, to terrorize the political environment. This is what the European Parliament report says. This is what the United States State Department Human Rights report says. This is what Freedom House report says. Please, let's avoid giving misperceptions, misreadings of the real situation, not only the Turkish people,
Henri
but
Barki,
also
just
the
jump in
world,
quickly.
the world public opinion.
Just jump in there quickly, and then we'll move on.
Look, there's no question that every government in Turkey has had authoritarian tendencies, including this one. But I would very respectfully submit that part of the problem here is the overall arching system here, which was created by the 1982 constitution that the military imposed on Turkey. This constitution is an undemocratic constitution.
No doubt about
until
that.
This
Nobody is objecting to that. That's the clear case.
Let me finish. Let me finish. Please let me finish. Until this constitution is changed and a really liberal democratic constitution is brought to Turkey,
who will
democracy
change
in Turkey will be under. Well, it has to be changed by everybody together, by the Turkish public, the Turkish government, the Turkish parliament, and Turkish civil society. But to suggest that this government is being undemocratic, whereas previous governments were democratic, I think would be unfair. This government has been more democratic than previous governments. It has done more reforms towards democracy, and this is something the Europeans have recognized. If you look at the yes, the Europeans today are critical of some of the actions of the government, but I would argue that compared to 2002, when Turkey was really not democratic, there's been a lot of improvements. The Europeans otherwise would not have opened the door.
Gentlemen, I'm going to just jump in.
That was not the case.
This is simply not true.
Okay, if you don't mind, I'm just going to jump in because actually, as I'm looking down my list of questions, you two gentlemen are actually answering most of them before I've got to them. So I do want to move on to a couple of things because all three of you have mentioned the specific cases in the last few years, and I want to make sure our viewers are up to speed with that as well. I want to take them through one of the big cases involving senior military personnel allegedly plotting to topple the AKP government. Ergenekon is the first one. Let's just take you through that. Goes back to June of 2007 when hand grenades and fuses were found in the attic of a house in an Istanbul slum. It sounds quite limited, but investigators claimed they were stashed there by an ultra-nationalist retired officer who was later linked to an elaborate coup plot. The government says, and we've heard about this plot was planned by a group affiliated with Ergenekon, a secret group including, apparently, 4-star generals, military officers, professors, underworld figures. And since that time, almost 300 people have been detained. Mustafa Akyol, if I can come to you, in Istanbul. But you don't, I would hope, detain over 300 people over 4 years if there's not something concrete behind it. Yet this case just keeps going on and casts a shadow, if you like, over Turkish politics.
Well, first of all, I should say that I'm moved as a Turkish citizen to see a former general defending human rights and right to free speech. That's great. I mean, we would love to see more of them from our generals. I mean, until a few years ago, we were not really hearing that from our generals or the like-minded. They were only speaking about protecting secularism and the indivisibility of the nation, and secularism in a very narrow sense, because the AKP doesn't oppose secularism. They just want to redefine it in a more liberal way. But when it comes to cases like Ergenekon, I said, like in the beginning, I am also critical of some of the details of these cases. I think people should not be in jail unless they're serial killers or something. I mean, it can be on trial, but they should not be in jail for years. But the thing is, I criticize those things. But this is also, we should realize that this is what Turkish justice system is. Unfortunately, 70,000 people are in jail in Turkey as arrested while their cases goes on. In all cases, that's the Turkish legal system, unfortunately. So we should reform the system. And I urge the government to reform the system. And does the current government, AKP, has some authoritarian languages and emphases? Yes, but I again agree with Henry Barkey that this government has made more reforms than any other government. That's why the Kurds, the non-Muslims in Turkey, feel much more sympathetic to this government than any other governments. The thing is that our generals and the ultra-secular segment of the society, which also they are a part of, they have never felt any trouble in this country before because they were always the first-class citizens. Now, for the first time, some of the problematic aspects of our legal tradition is hurting them, and I'm not advocating that. But then I think from this we should, as Turks, we should come to a consensus saying that, well, we need a more liberal democracy which will give rights to every citizen, to our military personnel, to the ladies who wear the headscarf and who still are not accepted as first-class citizens by our military establishment because they're not allowed into military areas. So right. We need reform in all the issues, but I think it is unfair to say that Turkey has gone more illiberal or more undemocratic in the previous years. If you don't cherry pick but read the whole European progress reports, that's it. You will see there are still problems, but we have made progress on many fronts.
Right, and if you thought Ergenekon sounded interesting, I also want to take the viewers through the case known as Sledgehammer. which goes back to 2003 when Taraf, an independent Turkish newspaper, published leaked documents signed by Lieutenant General Cetan Dogan of the Turkish land forces. The alleged plan included bombing 2 Istanbul mosques and provoking Greece into shooting down a Turkish plane over the Aegean Sea. Based on that report, on the 21st of February 2010, 49 personnel were detained, and again it includes admirals, generals, colonels, some retired, others still in active duty. Haldun Samazturk, don't worry, I'm going to come back to you in a moment. I just want to talk to Henry Barkey very quickly before I come back to you on the issue of sledgehammer. Again, just for some background for our guests. I mean, those ideas of bombing mosques and shooting down planes, it sounds, I won't say far-fetched, but it's certainly more, it moves on from the Ergenekon case. Has any of this ever been proved, or is it just, again, more arrests?
Well, the case has not been proven because it's still ongoing, and the prosecutors need to be able to show the proof for all these allegations. I mean, the problem in Turkey, as I alluded earlier and Mustafa also said, is that you have a system where you're guilty essentially until proven innocent. So if there's an allegation against you, and by the way, those allegations are serious allegations in the sense that there were documents. It's not just one newspaper making up some stuff. So there were documents. The question is, then you have to assess the validity and the credibility of those documents, and then you have to make a case for it. I mean, clearly, I do believe that there is something there. Whether or not every single person who's been arrested is deeply involved or is a matter of the court proving it. But because you are guilty until proven innocent, these people are in jail. But to me, what is a little bit striking is that when General Solmazar complains about this for years, and is still continuing, when you go to the Kurdish east and southeast, there are cases where people have been languishing in jail for years and years. And I've seen some of the evidence. And for example, there's a very famous case called KCK, which is a 7,500-page indictment. And when you look through it, you realize it's a horrid document. It's a horrid piece of allegation. There's no proof in many cases, but people have been languishing in jail for years because you're proven in Turkey you're guilty until you're proven innocent. So that applies to a Kurdish dissident as well as to an officer in the Turkish General Staff. I mean, both of them should be treated equally. But the problem is, until now, it was always dissidents who got the raw end of the deal, and now when it is the generals who are getting the same treatment, people are up in arms and saying, "Oh my God, look how unjust the system is." But the system has been unjust for decades.
Okay, starting to run out of time. So I've got to really go back to Haldun Samazturk because I know you've been listening to what our other two guests have been saying. Just tell me your thoughts on these two cases, Ergenekon and Sledgehammer, and the way that these accused have been treated throughout all this.
You know, follow on to what Mr. Henry Barkey said. Yes, these problems always existed in Turkey. We always knew that. But it was not up to the military to make the amendments. This current government has been in power for about 10 years. So if they are so democratically inclined, why they did not do anything at all? I would question. Regarding the cases, Ergenekon and Sledgehammer, they've been ongoing for years. There hasn't been any conviction at all, and there is no conviction even over the horizon yet. What we call Ergenekon has come as waves. Now we have Ergenekon 1, 2, 3, and 4. And for Sledgehammer, we have Sledgehammer 1, 2, 3. I mean, it's like a series. It's like a soap opera. Based on what? Based on what? What's the evidence? This is only a single CD, a Word document in a single CD, and the falseness of this CD has been proven several times based on official reports. Still, the judiciary keep all these hundreds of admirals and generals and officers in jail, arrested, because the judiciary, these special courts, are protected by the government. Without government protection, they could never do that, because this practice is against even the current Turkish laws and Turkish judicial practice. This is unacceptable. That's why all these generals, first time in modern Turkish history, They had to resign because they had no other choice. It was a desperate attempt to attract the attention of the Turkish public to real problems of Turkey. This is not a problem of civil-military relations. This is a problem of Turkish democratic consolidation.
Gentlemen, I think we could probably go on for another half hour or so, but we've run out of time, I'm afraid. So I want to thank all of you for your views and for your time today. Mustafa Akyol, Henri Baki and Halden Selmaz-Turk, all joining us to talk Turkey today. And thank you, our viewers, you are, of course, for joining us for this edition of Inside Story. Comments and suggestions, if you'd like to send them to us, please do hop on the email insidestory@aljazeera.net. From the whole team, though, it's goodbye for now.